Hello, everyone, and welcome to Headwise, the weekly webcast and podcast of the National Headache Foundation. I'm Dr. Lindsay Weitzel. I'm the founder of Migraine Nation, and I have a history of chronic and daily migraine that began at the age of 4. I am excited to be here today with Kelsey Feng. Hi, Kelsey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Kelsey is a well-known and awesome migraine advocate and chronic illness advocate. I was lucky enough to meet Kelsey at Headache on the Hill this year. You may know them from Kelsey's Migraine on Instagram. So I'm going to go ahead and start asking Kelsey some questions about what it's like to live with migraine and the illnesses that are discussed on Kelsey's Migraine. So Kelsey, let's start by telling the audience about yourself and your migraine and chronic illness journey.
So my journey started, I believe when I was 16, but as I'm learning more and more about migraine, there are signs and symptoms that I had in earlier childhood that kind of point to vestibular migraine, but I was never diagnosed, and
Mhm.
it's based on my foggy childhood memories. So we're kind of going with 16 for now. Um, I started with episodic migraine when I was a junior in high school, and I had no idea what was going on. I just remember feeling sick, uh, out of it. I remember the lights just felt like they were burning. I was in my AP English language class, and not a fun environment to be in already, probably
Mhm.
stressful. Is probably why it triggered an attack. And those episodes stayed on until, well, they've chronified now. Back in 2021 is when I started getting chronic migraine. So episodes continued to 15 a month, at least 15 a month, and then eventually to daily in June. So, and I've been dealing with daily migraine attacks since then, and a
Right.
whole load of other chronic illnesses in addition to after that.
Right. What do you feel, and please feel free to discuss the other illnesses, any comorbidities. It's so important that we don't leave those out of the journey because they are part of what makes up this illness that we deal with every day.
Mhm.
What do you feel has been the most difficult part of your illness journey?
I think I learned the levels of, I guess, disability. I haven't really, when I was 16, I didn't necessarily feel disabled by this fact, but as it progressed, especially when it turned into daily attacks, I had to completely change every part of my life. Um, how I went to work, how I dealt with my personal life, social life, um, even down to cleaning products. Like every aspect of
Hmm.
my life changed because of daily migraine attacks. And in my journey of trying to get a diagnosis, it took 8 years to actually get that migraine diagnosis. And I'm actually going through something right now where that diagnosis might actually change to I'm currently diagnosed with chronic migraine with aura, but I had new symptoms show up about 2 weeks ago now, that are reflecting more similar to hemiplegic migraine or
Hmm.
even rare MOMS, where I'm currently seeing Dr. Thomas Berg, and we're kind of figuring it out as we go.
Hmm.
But migraine is like a always, what's the word for it? Always changing,
Ever changing,
ever changing. Yeah.
moving target.
I wish it stayed the same because it's like once you find something that works and then it changes again. So unfortunately, it's impacted every part of my life, and I'm still working on managing it, managing uh my personal life and work life with it.
Right. Do you feel that your family, friends, etc., have understood your chronic illness? Have you had problems in this area? Has it been difficult for you at all?
Luckily for me, I feel like my friends understood pretty well, so I don't have to worry too much about that. But I did have some issues with my family. My dad thinks he has sinus headaches.
Mhm.
He's an immigrant and he's pretty hard on his ways, we're gonna say, views, and
Right.
does not think he has migraine, but he definitely has migraine. I'm not sure episodic or chronic per se, but I know where I got it from. And I also
Mhm.
have a younger brother who also has migraine. Um, After they saw like how debilitating it was for me, I think they're
Mhm.
slowly adjusting and trying to understand it themselves, but they still don't take it as seriously as I do. And I think it's just been a journey to try to introduce them to what could happen, because it's not like, I started out where I needed support, where I needed medication with me all the time, where I needed
Right.
neuromodulation, all our everything in our migraine toolkit to function.
Right. Right. Did you experience medical gaslighting? Because you did say it took so long for you to get your diagnosis. I think, did you say 8 years?
Yes, 8 years.
Right. Right. And I can fully understand that, especially because in my history, it was so long ago before people were even as good as they are now at diagnosing it. So, did you experience medical gaslighting or medical professionals dismissing or ignoring your symptoms, et cetera? Or you might even, with a diagnosis, still experience it. I shouldn't say, I shouldn't be using the past tense, I guess.
I think in the past, I didn't necessarily experience medical gaslighting per se, but it took 8 years for me to get a diagnosis. I think there was a combination of factors in it. I always check mark headaches on those intake forms. No provider ever asked me about headaches. I think they
Mm-hmm.
just assumed, everyone gets headaches and maybe they're just tension headaches, but no one really
Mm-hmm.
questioned it. And so therefore it was never corrected. There was nothing to um, help ease the pain, because I was just taking a lot of over the counter medication just to get by. And I feel like that's kind of everyone's journey. They started there and evolved into having to get prescriptions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
from there, I believe like I saw pretty much primary care providers for a very long time, so I didn't really need
Mm-hmm.
to see a specialist. Luckily, growing up, and no one pointed out that there was an issue with me. I think they just believed that at least my family, I think, thought was I was being dramatic when times happened, or like I had a low tolerance for pain. So not
Right.
medical gaslighting, but more gaslighting in general.
Mm-hmm.
I did experience medical gaslighting actually recently. I had to go to the ER due to right-sided weakness. That is not
Mm-hmm.
typically a symptom of migraine for me, just to make sure I wasn't having a stroke. And I ended up having tremors going on. And the nurse on duty, when I was trying to explain to her that tremors have started, like it's kind of concerning. I've never had tremors before. Uh, I remember her distinctly asking, "Are you sure it's not anxiety?" And like, while I do have generalized anxiety disorder, I am very aware of what anxiety feels like. It was not anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like that really hit home, because I was like, oh, this is exactly what other people have described the experience as. And I kind of reassured her that it was not anxiety, and I knew exactly what anxiety felt like. And luckily,
Mm-hmm.
she seemed to believe me, and I was able to go into the bath. But it was one of those experiences that I think is always going to live with me, because I was like, I was my whole right side was trembling. It was not a
Right.
normal like a little bit of like shaking. Like it was a lot of movement, and I don't think anyone with just plain old anxiety would be moving that much from it.
Right.
But
Right.
you know, we come across all kinds of different people with chronic illness. So
Yes. Thank
yeah.
you for that story. I love that story. That's a great story. I love stories I've heard from people who were accused of being drug seekers when they hadn't even asked for a narcotic or any other medication that you would
Hmm.
normally be considered someone would be seeking.
Hmm.
They were asking for Toradol,
Yeah.
so things, those some stories, they're very, I don't want to sound judgmental of the medical community, but it's true. A lot of these things happen to us. They're strange, and it's sad when it happens, and we should all feel like we can talk about it, in the community. I wanted to ask, going back to your life and plans, etc., do you feel you had to give up on anything because of migraine?
I think right now I am struggling actually with work specifically.
Mm,
I've previously, about a year ago, went on FMLA and just like short-term disability. Just as it was a few months after I had daily migraine attacks and I was just not able to function anymore at work. Like it
mm,
was, I had two monitors, even with like screen protectors and like blue light filters, everything was not working in terms of like everything felt like it was triggering attacks. So I did
mm,
take a short break from work. I think it was 4 months, I want to say. It was one of those instances where I went from being one of like I don't want to sound braggy, but I was really good at my job and I work in
right.
customer service. Like um I was trusted with like multi-million dollar accounts. Like I knew how to do my job and I was doing it pretty well. But like having to recognize that like I need help and I can't just keep going on like this and pushing myself to the point where it's just making it worse. It's not
Right.
improving. I feel like I'm making it worse on my coworkers and feeling this guilt that I shouldn't feel guilty for living with a chronic illness. It's not my fault. It's if there was a cure, I think we'd all be lining up for it. But unfortunately,
Mm,
we are where we are. And then I'm actually approaching this same sentiment currently again because it's been about a year since I took that break and work has become overwhelming again. I've had
mm-hmm,
new debilitating symptoms where I'm a little bit afraid to drive right now. I'm trying to figure
mm-hmm.
out how to deal with this. Is it going to involve physical therapy? Is this like there's so many aspects of new symptoms that we have to engage that I think people don't realize how scary that is,
Right.
and how much I'd prefer to just work, get my job done, get a paycheck, not have to worry about the bills. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's gonna happen again. I think I'm gonna have to step away at least a bit or something to figure out like how to prioritize my health.
Right. I think that I'm glad you answered that so honestly, thank you so much. I think that most people do not fully understand the concerns we have over career, work, whatever it is. I get it all the time. You have this many degrees. You can, yeah, well, doesn't matter how many degrees you have if you randomly out of the blue can't work for 2 weeks every once in a while. It is an extremely difficult thing to work and have a plan in life for a career with migraine, let alone other chronic illnesses on top of it. So thank you for being so honest about that. That was a great answer. So how about your personal life? Has it affected your personal life at all? I know some people have huge stories around that, and some people just have tons of support. I never know which way it's going to go.
I think I think it varies. So personal life, with my family, I feel like I'm always a little cautious mentioning new medical things with my mom. I feel like I make her worry. So I try to digest that a little bit first before I give her the information, just
Yeah.
to for me, it's more of a breath of fresh air, honestly, here getting a diagnosis, because it tells me that it's not all in my head. Like I feel like
Hmm.
I gaslight myself, and like, it's something that I'm
Right.
working on, but it's hard to not just ignore that voice in your head. It's like it's not a big deal, when it could be. So with my mom, it's a step-by-step process. I think with my brother and the rest of my family, they're pretty understanding now, and I feel like pretty accommodating. There's still instances of like, okay, I really wish you wouldn't use like perfume around me, just like I'm visiting for the
Hmm.
week kind of things.
Hmm.
But we take time, we adjust, if we want to spend time with each other, it's kind of one of those give and take situations. Um, for friends, I feel like friends are really supportive. My roommate is one of my best friends, and has like accommodated me so well, is
Hmm.
totally okay with changing out all the cleaning products to like scent free, is just doesn't wear like cologne. There's just a lot of things that just those little things really add up. And I feel like
Yeah.
as someone who, dealt with like a life-changing event essentially, or um it was really good to have that kind of support when, I didn't know anyone else who had daily migraine attacks. I didn't know anyone else who um was that debilitated by any condition at that time. So it it was nice to have that support. So I think I'm very lucky in that way.
Hmm.
And luckily, I've actually also gained a community with it as well
Right.
that I'm
Right.
very thankful for.
We are all so lucky now that we have so many of us in this community. I think that that is just miraculous that we have that. And you keep bringing up the cleaning products, and I have to say,
Sorry.
I can handle anything almost better than the smell of scented trash bags, which is just the slightest sense,
Oh,
but I'd almost rather smell the trash. And I don't know what it is about that. Every time someone accidentally brings those home, I'm like, get them out. I can smell them from a mile away. It's just horrible.
they're
So,
awful.
yeah, it's interesting to me that you keep bringing that up. So,
I
have
just
you
noticed
found
it
any,
distinctly.
yeah, have you found any positives in your migraine journey?
I have. I felt like the biggest positive is I feel like it gave me a purpose. I didn't really feel like I had a purpose prior to maybe the depression speaking, maybe just, being in my 20s and not figuring it
Hmm.
out yet. But I feel like despite how debilitating the condition has been, I feel like migraine has given me a community.
Hmm.
I love all the other advocates. I love the people I meet. Everyone is so nice and like willing to listen and so supportive of you, and also uh, gives really helpful advice, actual advice that you
Right.
want to hear, and not, you know, yoga and hydrate, and I noticed that there was like a need for a voice that I feel like hadn't been heard before.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, when I joined the community, it was quite white and still can be, and it
Hmm.
may not have felt like the safest place at first. Um,
Hmm.
I don't, I'm used to being around people of color, besides like my family, but friends, like people around me. So it was a little startling at first. And it was
Right.
uh, an area where I wasn't sure, if I could trust people, or what kind of information that I would disclose because of just past experiences. And because of that, I felt the need that I was like, maybe my voice would help. Maybe like a queer, not non-binary person who, tries to uplift people of color all the time, who understands the intersectionality of being queer in like this disabled community, understanding that people of color experiences are not the same when you go to the provider's office. Um,
Right.
and I think I don't want to say it's important, but I guess it is important. Like it's weird to be like one of the few Asian American faces in the migraine disability community. Like,
Right.
why is that? So I want other people to feel safe and uh, feel like they have their voices heard and feel like they can also trust that the information that's being shared is actual information they could use and not like untrustworthy, especially for, I'm just thinking of my dad in this instance. He doesn't
Mm.
trust doctors. He just thinks, they're here for the money, and no offense, as I know you're a provider, but like
I'm not
he
a provider. I'm a PhD. So
okay.
I'm more of a scientist. I'm not an MD.
Okay.
So yes. So go ahead,
You're
say whatever
like,
you
go
need.
ahead.
Go
um,
ahead.
but he does have a distrust in the system, and like I understand it because
Hmm.
it can cost an arm and a leg, especially if you don't have insurance. So, uh, reaching out to someone like him or even the younger generation of knowing what migraine is and seeing like, you know, I think something Migrant World Summit actually did recently. They shared some information about hair washing as a trigger for migraine. And that was something I grew up learning. Like my dad and my grandma were both like, you have to blow dry your hair. It's gonna cause
Oh,
headaches. And I didn't believe them. I really thought they were
yeah.
just, spouting their thing as adults, just trying to get me to blow dry my hair, like they hated my hair wet or
Yeah.
something. And
Right.
finding out that this is something real and knowing like
Oh, it
that's the
is.
kind of
Right.
information that I would
Hmm.
like to share and people feel um, open to understanding all that.
Hmm. Do you feel you've had a difficult experience with the medical community, et cetera, being a person of color, being all these things that you've stated, queer, non-binary, has it been more difficult for you at all, being heard?
I think I I think in my earlier journey of trying to seek a diagnosis, maybe so
Mm,
because providers I feel like dismiss the fact that maybe because I'm like female like presenting that I'm just like hysteric, or maybe they thought it was anxiety, or I don't know
right.
what they thought, but they did dismiss the fact that, I'm mentioning headaches, but no one's really questioning the seriousness of what that could mean. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't know exactly what they saw that made them dismiss that fact because I can't say for sure. Um,
Hmm.
I know I'm still dealing with things of I go to providers' offices. A lot of the times, you just have to mark like sex on there. You don't mark gender identity. You don't mark pronouns.
Right.
It's very few providers that I've seen that actually include that kind of information. And most of them are like the schools, like the institutions, who are usually in a very different environment. They're already more research forward and more forward thinking. Um,
Right.
but I still come across it. I'm still constantly, misgendered, constantly use the wrong pronouns. Like I've unfortunately gotten used to it, but it's one of those experiences that um, I know that there's a push moving forward with it, but still a slow push. And I live in California. It's not
Hmm.
as left leaning as everyone thinks. Like everyone's gonna get everything right about you. Like there's still always
Right.
gonna be that struggle.
Right. Right. What is the main message you feel you want to get out to the world about migraine, chronic illness, and who you are, and what is the audience you really want to reach?
I think ultimately my goal is to help people. So with
Hmm.
the information I share, I hope that they essentially just gain something from it, whether or not they're better educated on it so they can help a friend, whether or not they actually have a tip that they can use moving forward. Um, that's my ultimate goal. I feel like I just want people to feel seen and feel heard. And like if I am able to help with that, then that's
Hmm.
great. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I'm always telling people my personal philosophy that we each need to build a rock wall against migraine, a personalized rock wall where half the rocks are medications or devices, etc. Half are lifestyle factors, and the mortar that holds it all together is our mentality. What are a couple of your most important rocks, so to speak?
I think one of the big ones is already on my face for those listening. It's prescription Avilex glasses.
Oh, awesome.
I
Okay.
have light sensitivity constantly, so that is a lifesaver, especially with
Hmm.
screens, constant screens.
Right.
What else? I have been using Cephalate almost daily lately, so that's been a
Okay.
huge lifesaver. Meds, I feel like there's always meds,
Right.
whatever cocktail for that day of
Hmm.
meds, but those, um, trying to think. Oh, of course, my headache hat, my ice pack. That's always my favorite. I feel like
My
it
son loves his. Yeah,
it
he
works
wears
so
it all the
well.
time.
It
He
works so
wears it so
well.
much, I think it's going to become the coolest thing in third grade is the ice hat.
That's so
So
cute, but
yeah.
also so concerning. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. Is there anything you'd like to add for our audience to hear today?
I think really the ultimate thing I want them to know is that there's hope, there's support out there. There's always going to be someone there to listen. And then if you need to, my DMs are open. So if you, I'm open to chatting, I'm open to sharing my story more, or if you just want to voice your concerns, I'm okay to listen. So yeah.
All right. All right. Well, Kelsey, thank you for all that you do for the community. I'm very impressed. I'm impressed with how open you are about your symptoms and your journey. Everything when I look at Kelsey's migraine on Instagram, to me, the word that comes to mind is brave. It just seems very open, very brave, very honest, and I love it. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for being on Headwise today. And thank you everyone for joining us this week for the weekly video cast and podcast of the National Headache Foundation. Bye-bye.